I want to draw the comparison between an efficiency mindset and an effectiveness mindset. In an efficiency mindset, we're very much focused, and it sounds, for many people that may be listening, they might go, yeah, of course. It's all focused on saving money, saving time. But there's a thinking methodology in this that says, okay, so we understand our life is very linear and it's going to go forward very linearly. There's nothing's going to disturb us. And of course, the pandemic probably shook that up. But we will recruit people who fit into very neat slots, are very compliant with that way of thinking. They fit our way of thinking. And because we're not having any disruption, we want them to just carry on doing this same thing for 10 years, and they get into a habit of almost complacency themselves. Nobody's thinking really in that business about what's next and how do we imagine what that customer's going to be doing next, and then translate that back into our business, which may include changing our processes, learning new things and unlearning old things. And that's often a big issue that people can't unlearn quickly enough. Welcome, and thank you for joining me today. My name is Gary Newbury. I'm a senior executive on call, helping businesses in a make, move, sell flow of consumer goods and services. My purpose is to inspire business leaders, particularly those within the consumer products and retailing space, to think big, be bold, scale, adapt and win, one epic supply chain transformation at a time. There's additional content available through my website, RetailAID.ca, or on my YouTube channel, RetailAID. Be sure to check it out. As the business world faces much volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, organizations need to be tapping into resources with an inside edge on transitioning their teams to be agile, innovative, and digital, with thought leaders, experts, and senior executives who have mastery of operational turnarounds and strategic transformations to help reorientate their enterprises. There's great material to get through here, so let's get started.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Executives Corner with Simona. Here we are today with another interesting and exciting topic for all you leaders and business leaders and CEOs out there. I have a wonderful guest who will be sharing his experience and expertise in the field of how disruptive business can actually be managed in an effective and efficient way. My today's guest is Gary Newbury. So welcome, Gary. I love your expertise in the field, and I hardly can't wait to cover the topic of how leaders can navigate disruption. Welcome.
Hey, thank you very much. Pleased to be here and to talk to your audience and hopefully add some value along the way. I have to say that I have quite a contrarian view on life, and that's born out of working in something like 50 plus companies, working on 70 or 80 different either full-time jobs or assignments, often mission critical. My background is in disruption. I've always been brought in to apparently fix disruption. So I'm looking forward to this discussion to perhaps share some of those pearls of wisdom along the way, and also just to stand back and think about what is effectiveness and what is efficiency, and actually try and dig beneath to understand how the disruption, for instance, of the pandemic and previous levels of disruption, which are often self-imposed, how management teams can get themselves in the right pickle about it, about how they think about things, and how that is endemic to their outcomes that they ultimately achieve.
Yeah. Wonderful. I know that you are a great expert and that you help a lot of executives and business leaders in the field of how they not only make, move, but as well sell their products and services. And I know that you have that long-term expertise and experience in that. So how did you land in that field of not only supply chain management, but as well helping leaders to navigate the disruption in different fields of organization? What's your background?
Just as a thumbnail, I mean, I started my life as a teenager delivering papers to residential addresses, and I found myself shoveling loaves of bread into the shelves at Sainsbury's. So that's my roots of retail. And then I found my way broadly into an office and tried to make sense of what was going on there. I ended up becoming a chartered management accountant, followed up by an MBA. And coming out from that MBA, I entered into, almost fell into a couple of operational turnarounds to kind of practice my art. And then I joined a company called Storehouse Distribution, which was a very large retailing operation, which was a conglomerate, but it was a specialty retail. It had loads of different brands, and worked through that transition as a execute a plan to centralize their supply chain operation, their distribution network, and then outsource it to Excel Logistics. And then within about 6 months, I had a change of leadership, and here we go. They said, no, that's wrong. We need to push it back so we can actually sell off some of these dodgy brands. And I fell into a company called H Distribution, where I became their CFO, and we grew the business tenfold by mostly organic growth and mergers and acquisitions over 3 years. So it was quite a hectic pace. When I fell out of that and fell into my own business for 18 years, helping lots of different companies across the whole retail supply chain, which is including manufacturing, third-party logistics, wholesaling, retailing, and the last mile, to kind of navigate what often they did to themselves. And then I migrated to Canada, and I've done a little bit of that work here, not enough for my own good. But I really enjoyed helping boards and business leaders to try and make sense of what they were facing. Most of the time it was self-imposed, and often other things were happening in the marketplace. But there was a certain way of thinking that I kept encountering, which, as I've reflected on those experiences in preparation for today, and they fall into two paths. One of a thinking model of efficiency, and one of effectiveness. And at a slogan level, efficiency can be looked at as doing the things right, being very good at these things. No context, but these things. And effectiveness is actually saying what are the things that we should be doing, and trying to progress a path of maybe getting in front of a consumer trend and doing a good job for the consumer. And I think that these things are important to understand as we face and have been facing this pandemic, the disruption that it's caused. And we can see what's happened is many people have stayed with a way of thinking. And every time the government says, just don't worry, another couple of weeks, they go, soon we'll be fine, and we'll be able to get back to normal. And I think that they've got to get to a point after 2021 months of, actually, we need to rethink this problem, and we need to shift from a focus on efficiency to a focus on effectiveness.
That's such a wonderful story. And I kept thinking as you were explaining it, that actually you came from that distributing papers and magazines to a guy who is actually turning around millions and helping organizations not only to reinvent, but as well to change the strategic focus. Yeah. And I believe it's so powerful, and you can kind of notice how your brain works and how you navigate through that. And do you have a story which is really relevant in that sense of pinpointing the critical issue and then turning it around, which was a huge, tremendous turnaround for a company or a business you worked for?
Yeah,
or
I've done a lot of turnaround, so it's always a question of which ones.
Select the one which will really be helpful for all the leaders listening to the two of us.
Yeah, I mean, typically before the pandemic, the disruption was often self-imposed. It could fall into one of three categories. We could either bring somebody from a competitor and set them loose in our business, and they go around trying to replicate the processes, systems, the infrastructure, the culture, and the KPIs in that business. They try and look for some matching and trying to exploit that. But we know that although we may compete in the same market, our history, our maturity, those 5 elements of process, systems, etc., are likely to be very different. Another example might be that, and it's very much in the efficiency way of thinking, which is, I tell you what, let's do an ERP implementation. That'll fix our business. Yes, quite right. And there's some signs of efficiency thinking, which is, before you do anything, the first thing that needs to be done is a business case. And the business case doesn't really feature about what we're going to do about the customer, how this thing that we're just about to invest in positions ourselves well in advance of the customer trend. It's actually, how do we do this better? How do we become more efficient? What's our ROI, our return on investment from this thing? And, you know, many of our ERPs were based on, well, we're going to do some head cut, chop in, and, you know, we're going to change, enable us to maybe move into a smaller building, or, you know, we'd be able to pick faster, we need less heads, whatever it might be. But it's all about doing the things more cost effectively. The third broad heading is when we are in the market, we're thinking we're customer focused, and we see an opportunity, and often it comes at us almost by a surprise. We win a big customer, not a small customer that fits neatly into our way we do things around here. We find a company, a customer that might give us 50% increase in business. And we're all around patting ourselves on the back going, look, this is great. Within a few months, we find out that it's stretched us in ways that we would never expect. We've burst through our capacities, and it's actually required us to develop more capabilities, of which we never envisaged. So we're running at this, trying to develop these new capabilities, because customers saying, well, we want this, we want that, we want that. You've got our business. What are you doing? So these things tend to be the magnets which attract people like me into these situations to try and unravel what's gone wrong and then to do something about it. And often this can be in a format of an operational turnaround, which it's probably an unusual term, because everyone says, oh, we just turn a few things around operation. I'm talking about an actual business turnaround as opposed to just an operational. And my definition of an operational turnaround is the market's good, but the business has lost its way against that market. So it just needs to reorientate itself, and through typically my leadership style, to actually get back into the marketplace and then proceed in a sort of orderly direction. Or a strategic transformation where something has happened in the market, we've lost our way completely, and we go for a strategic transformation, which may include a business model redesign, and which may include getting rid of lots of customers, slimming down some of the things that we did in terms of the operation, maybe taking on new assortments, whatever it might be, to actually position ourselves for success in the future. So that things like digital transformation would fit probably more easily into strategic transformations. So some of the weird stuff that I've been involved in, I was working with a small...
exciting stuff.
It's weird. When we look back at it, it's really exciting at the time, but it's actually quite emotionally draining. When I was working with a manufacturing organization and do some work in there, and I was working with their third party, used to feed their factory with stuff. And what used to happen is a big truck would come in once on a Monday, dump loads of stuff into their warehouse. The people would, from the factory, would say, I need these things for my just-in-time production system. And so I'd load everything up into a big truck, a big trailer, take it across, and people would scavenge it. And then about 3 o'clock in the morning, the warehouse would be phoned up, the owner of the warehouse would be phoned up, I need to get some more stuff out your warehouse. So I introduced a Kanban system of cards and everything just to calm that down. And we could, instead of having this big truck, we used to send over a little shuttle vehicle 2 or 3 times a day. And the client on the last day said that, we're going to run the weekend, and here's all the cards. And just before they took me out for lunch, they said, let's get all this done and get it back over there. and of course, the client, for exiting me, was like, the client said, did you do that? So, leadership, design, process, enthusiasm. And they wanted to take me out for dinner, so they had to lunch, so we had to do it first. But that the third party actually took me over a couple of months later. They took me to their big warehouse. Said, we haven't shown you the big warehouse, Gary. And I said, oh, show me it. And I looked around, biggish warehouse. It looks okay. It looks a bit crowded.
You see, Gary, that's how the big strategic reinvention actually materializes in actual implementation. So
Yes. Yeah.
that's the
So
real.
they said that they just won this big contract, but they were losing money at a fast rate of knots. And in fact, technically, they were insolvent and they should have been closed down. They said, what can you do for us? I said, when you say, what do you want? I mean, I said, what is variable here? And they looked at me and I said, no, what is variable here? In that sort of tone. And they said, well, I guess we are as well. I said, yes, you need to understand what's got to be done here includes you being variable in this, i.e. even as owners, we're going to have to perhaps remove you from a business. That's not the intention, but I want you to understand as we embark on this big transformation, because it was going to get very messy, it's going to be very taxing, it's going to be very challenging to everybody in the organization. Some will come straight away, some will be very resistant, and some will be in complete denial. But we're in an insolvent business and we need to make a big change now. And that will include customers going, different formats in the warehouse, whole range of different things. And that's exactly what happened over the next 3 to 6 months. We were able to turn the business around, so it started to make profits again. But they'd basically taken on a big customer. Their warehouse was something like 11,000 pallet spaces, and the customer was 4,500 pallet spaces. So it was a big chunk of money, and everyone was clapping themselves and tapping themselves on the back. But what they didn't understand was a customer said, I bring a pallet over to you at 2 o'clock in the morning. I want that loaded out at 5 o'clock to go to one of my bakeries. It's slightly different from, we operate day 1, day 3. So you give it to us, we order, assuming you're in the stock. We have a day to pick it and we put it on a truck, and the next day it goes into your bakery. So there were some big challenges. And this manufacturer represented 44% of bread production in the UK. So I had to sit down with them and say, guess what? In true tradition, and Alan Sugar, you're fired. And it was pretty tough because these guys were pretty brutal. But the funny thing about it is 2 weeks later, once they evaluated what that meant is, they came back and said, that's the best thing you did for us, because we had bad things happening in our business. And you put the brake on us, because we came out of a business that we drove into liquidation, and we were just about to do it to this company, and you braking actually made us look at our process and how can we better organize ourselves, because we actually want to work with you to give a great service to the bakeries that we support.
Yeah. No, you just said something so important, that every single change is really difficult, whatever big or small the change is, because it requires us humans to adjust to it, understand it, adjust to it, and really understand it and just live with it. And it's so really important. And there is another piece what I learned out from what you were just sharing with us, is that the difference between the efficiency and effectiveness is actually in the field that companies or organizations don't only do the things which they think are relevant, or which are maybe initiated from their customers, or just do stuff, but really work on important activities, important and relevant matters what really will make some impact. And knowing all of that, and what you just said, that you came at somebody external helping to do the turnaround, also maybe restructure the organization, suggesting firing somebody, replacing somebody, or just changing the positions for a specific employees. I believe that this can only really be done with an external help.
Yes.
And so would you be so nice to share with us, how do you usually help companies? Do you come as an external consultant? Do you work one-on-one with CEOs only, with specific departments, directors? How does your work usually look like in reality?
I have to say it depends, because I'm quite contingent of what I see. Sometimes it's come in and have a look and see what you think, and that can lead into some work, and it could be supporting work, or it can be we're in a deep place, and we need you to come in and actually operate us and make that change. And often I take on an interim, maybe COO, CSCO, Chief Supply Chain Officer, or even CEO, and I've done a number of interim CEO roles to manage that change. So very quickly, what I tend to do is, and I suggest anybody going into a new organization probably might want to think about this. You have to map the processes, and in mapping the process, you bump into so many people and you develop a sort of network and understand how the business actually works, as opposed to what's in theory working, because people carry around the model in their head about how it works. And they're very hard to shift that. So you have to collect the actual flows of how things are put together, and also collect a lot of data. Those two components, I probably know more than any other person in the business about how that business operates. The thing about efficiency, I just want to draw the comparison between an efficiency mindset and effectiveness mindset. In an efficiency mindset, we're very much focused, and it sounds, for many people that may be listening, they might go, yeah, of course, it's all focused on saving money, saving time. But there's a thinking methodology in this that says, okay, so we understand our life is very linear and it's going to go forward very linearly. There's nothing's going to disturb us. And of course, the pandemic probably shook that up. But we will recruit people who fit into very neat slots, are very compliant with that way of thinking. They fit our way of thinking. And because we're not having any disruption, we want them to just carry on doing this same thing for 10 years. And they get into a habit of almost complacency themselves. Nobody's thinking really in that business about what's next and how do we imagine what that customer's going to be doing next, and then translate that back into our business, which may include changing our processes, learning new things and unlearning old things. And that's often a big issue, that people can't unlearn quickly enough and anchor themselves in what used to happen 5-10 years ago. And we can see this when we implement ERP systems, that in the typical way, there's this great enthusiasm, we're going to do an ERP, right, out come the shopping lists. And then there's a process of chopping them back down to this. When we've done the implementation, assuming it goes smoothly, we look back at what our processes were prior, and we look forward to see what they are, and they're actually not that different.
Okay.
What tends to happen is when somebody introduces something weird and they try and reconfigure it in a complicated way, that throws everything off, and that's tended to be when I've got involved, is we're trying to unravel that complexity in how it's been set up, to calm it all down. And then often I get the opportunity to look at the wider business model and say, are we where we need to be? Was this ERP just an efficiency drive, or was it actually moving us much closer to our consumer? The effectiveness thing is about having oddballs like me around. We need to critically debate every step we take. The world is not linear. We work within a very complex world, very complex systems that we're involved in. If we think about the ecosystem, small changes here can have major ripples. So our world is not linear. So we actually need thoughtful, reflective thinking to actually help us to get to a much better place. So the efficiency is all about having a short-term profit view. The effectiveness thinking is about having a sustainable long-term business. And that business may look very different year to year. You know, if we look back 5 years and look at what we're doing now, that business may be it may have a transformative mindset which underpins what it does. Whereas an efficiency-minded thing tends to be, let's just carry on doing this. We found an opportunity in the market. We found out how we can configure our process systems, etc., and we just run that into the future and hope that as we achieve scale, as we achieve some recognition in the marketplace, we just get our heads down. And if we look at the response of many companies going into the pandemic, they just did more of what we were doing. More of it, harder, stronger, throw more labor at it, not to actually step back and go, oops, We didn't anticipate this, and many people didn't, not the pandemic, but the actual reaction to the pandemic. Okay, if we have a effective mindset or a nimble mindset, call it what you like, we can start to reconfigure this. We can dig our way out of this in a thoughtful, critically debated manner, whereas the efficiency mindset just said, no, just work harder, we get through it somehow. Yeah. And there's no real forward plan that links what we're doing now to the future and that step back. So these things what we're doing now are the first steps on that new journey.
Agree. We had such a quick learning, or got such a fast lessons during the pandemic, and I believe what you just described actually supported those industries or companies being even more successful they were in the past. And it was a very, very like quick lesson in everything, not only how we consider market on consumers, but as well how we adjust to change. And once again, we are at that change. And I would love to connect that thought with also you being very agile, because I know you're a facilitator, you're a speaker, you do the podcast, and I know you've been awarded several times for your expertise in the supply chain, but as well in retail. So knowing all of that and having that background and experience and helping different companies and businesses, what is one of your best lessons you love to share, or quotes you share usually with your clients?
Well,
really valuable also for the listener.
Yeah, it's only. I mean, I spill out loads of pearls during the day, and sometimes at client situations. Can you remember you said that? Oh, that was pretty inspiring. Was that me? But I think the one that really captured my imagination, it's been fairly recently, it was one of your previous guests, George Minakakis, in one of his books. He said, and it just sneaked in there, but I don't think he realized how profound what he wrote was, certainly to me. And it was, competitors are not the enemy, which is kind of quite contrary in its own right. The failure to create trends is. And I thought, I was reading it, hang on, it was this like pin drop moment. Oh, so I think that's really important. Where I come from a retail dimension, so when I go and talk to retailers, they often talk about probably waning off of this, but in a year or two ago, we were talking about what's Amazon doing. We need to do more of what Amazon's doing. They're thinking that, if they just follow that, well, hold the bus. They are technically the largest retailer in the world. They've had 25 years where they haven't had to make a huge amount of profit. Other businesses have developed within their portfolio that support their cash flow. They've got this massive brand across the world. They're in global markets, and they've worked exclusively on how to get stuff very quickly to people's porches. Whereas a retailer come in like, we run stores. Oh, let's do what Amazon are doing. No, it's completely different. So I think
the lesson, like, don't be a follower, create the trends.
Yes, that's right. You have to understand your consumer and find out where they're going. Of course, it's been really challenging over the last couple of years because we didn't go into the pandemic knowing our customer in the first place, but the pandemic has shifted their mindset. They've shifted their channel. They're doing more e-commerce than they ever done before. They've shifted their demand pattern, both in terms of category. So instead of being outside experiences, restaurants and stuff outside, holidays, they've spent a lot of their money inside the home on, redecorations and electronic equipment. And also the whole demand pattern has shifted in terms of their volume. They've, gone in lots of different places that we couldn't anticipate it, but we still need to understand where that consumer is going. And we need to try and educate them to go in a certain direction if we can, if that's entirely possible, and then get in front of that and provide propositions which are appealing and compelling. That's a bit challenging, and you can't do that with an efficiency mindset.
Yeah, agree. And, you also really can't do that if you really don't get in touch with such good quotes, like, learn from mistakes and don't be a follower. And already those two can create kind of very strong strategic path. So Gary, if somebody would love to reach out to you, where they can find you, how they can either see your work or just reach out to you to have a discussion.
I'm very visible on LinkedIn most days. Some days I'm off, so just find me, Gary Newbury, you'll find me. I have my own website, it's RetailAID.ca. And I've got a number of podcast channels.
All the details are in the post of this video, so all who would love to reach out to you can find the contact just to reach out. As we are coming close to the end of our interview, is there something you would love to share with our listeners? Because today's episode of Executives Corner is the last one this year. Any kind of a good advice for next year in that disruptive business supply retail world?
Problems don't go away of their own accord, they just get bigger. So I've been advocating for pretty much all the pandemic, we need to rethink this problem, guys. Oh no, let's just work a bit harder. No, rethink this problem, because if we think about many retailers, they've got many other businesses, they've got very extended supply chains. They found a cheap source of product, it's called China. And look at what's happened next. We've got all these nodes that connect things. So they used to run very smoothly, are all being disrupted. You know, things are on, things are off, they're out of sync. You know, boats that used to be struggling for work are now full. So as we finish 2021, I think that if you're still on that treadmill of get to the end and we'll be fine, please stop. As a management team, stand back and go, okay, can we survive another 20 months of doing this, because it's not doing any of us any good as individuals. Our shareholders, our investors, our stakeholders want us to rethink this problem. They want us to survive. How are we going to do that? And the 2022 is that opportunity to shine.
Yeah, absolutely.
They must find a way through this, which doesn't involve lots of phone calls, lots of Rolodex, and a lot of shouting to try and expedite, try and make that thing that didn't quite work very well 2019, certainly came under a lot of pressure 2020, 2021, to make that work. That's done. You can't get any better than you've done now. And the disruption is going to increase. It's going to continue to accelerate.
Will exist constantly. It will be a normal, one of the normal.
Yes. Yeah. People say, when we get back to normal, we're already in it. Deal with it.
We are absolutely. And I would add what we just said it so nicely, that at the end of the day, we are also humans. And I believe that pandemics also taught us not only to think about the processes and the improvements of the organizational structure or the strategy, it also taught us as leaders that we do pay attention how to engage our employees in the sense of showing compassion, but as well accepting our own mistakes and accepting their mistakes and work on that and build on that. And
I would say this, and I haven't really talked about employees. The reason why I talked about newspapers into factories, whatever, is I've never forgotten how easy it is to motivate people in factories, people on the shop floor. I noticed very early in my career that with good leadership, you could really lift. You found some affinity in that for yourself as an individual, spraying stuff or fixing something on the production line, whatever it might be. But we often sit in our boardrooms, our executive suites, whatever offices, surrounded by lots of diary appointments and schedules and meetings and all this kind of stuff. And we forget the value is added by the people on the ground, and they don't need very much. They don't need a lot of money to motivate them. In fact, they wouldn't mind a bit more. They want good quality leadership, clear direction, a sense of empathy within the business, that they want to get up in the morning and they want to rush to work because this is a place they want to be. And I think that we often don't see a connection between executive action and motivation on the shop floor.
Yeah, agree. And it wraps up so nicely our interview. And I'm really grateful that you have been such a resourceful and wonderful guest. I really loved everything what you shared, and I believe it will be of value for a lot of our listeners. So thank you very much, Gary. And once again, everybody who wants to reach us out to you, contacts are in the post of this video, so they can find them there. And I would love to thank you for being my last guest in this year. And I would love to thank to everybody who was listening to us. And thanks a lot for being here with us. And I believe I'll see you next year with another episode of Executives Corner, and it will be on 3rd of January. So take care. Thank you, Gary.
Thank you.
Take care, everybody, and I'll see you in next week. Bye-bye. Ciao, ciao. Take care.
Thank you for listening today. I hope the information has been valuable for you and your team. You can connect with me via the website retail.ca and go to the contact page, or via LinkedIn by typing linkedin.com/in/last-mile. Look forward to hearing from you and playing an active part with your supply chain and your business's transformation as you start to act boldly, think big, scale, adapt, and win.